Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Chatting with the Lightkeeper. This will be the first official episode of December, so I guess we are now officially into the happy holiday season. In fact, Hanukkah kicks off Thursday at sunset, which just feels really early to me. I mean, it just feels like this year is flying by. Um, I don't know if you feel the same way or not, but that is certainly how it is feeling for me this year. It just seems like Zoom. And here we are, it's December, and 2024 is just around the corner. Santa will be here with all his toys for the good and naughty little girls and boys, or I guess since we are in an adult lifestyle, we're not little boys and girls, unless you're into age regression play, then maybe you are a little. But anyway, it just seems like the whole year has blown by, and it's just amazing to think of how fast it's gone by. So let's kind of get into the meat and the substance of this little fun little podcast. The first thing, I know it's something I've talked about on the podcast before, but there was an incident last week where a good friend sends me a message, and they're like, "Hey, doesn't PRIC stand for Personal Responsibility Informed Consensual Kink?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then they're like, "You've got to check this posting out." Like, oh boy. So head over, check out the post, and the individual was attempting to um, write a post about, safety protocols in BDSM, safe, sane, consensual, RAC, risk-aware, consensual kink, PRIC, and the four C's, caring, communication, consent, and caution. Now, when they got to PRIC, it was like the last one they got to. And this is where I was really like, wait, what? The whole premise of their post was on safety protocols, which is fabulous. We need in the community to have discussions and conversations about that. However, they get to PRIC, and the whole thing that they've written is all safety protocol. And they say that PRIC stands for pressure, restriction, intense sensation, cock, torture. And I'm like, okay, even if that is what PRIC means to that individual, if that person was writing about safety protocols in the lifestyle, why would you include that definition of PRIC with your post? It like makes no sense. And I was totally baffled by it. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what on earth is going on here? And then I scrolled through some more of their posts, and it was just it caused me to facepalm. There was like a how-to guide on spanking, um, which never ever discussed consent. The only, I guess, mention or kind of getting close to consent was a section on how to prepare your submissive woman to receive a spanking. And that preparation consisted of telling them that they are about to be spanked. Like, it was just mind-boggling, and everything was man spanks, woman meekly receives. And, as far as consent goes, hey, babe, bend over, I'm gonna spank you. Um, no, it doesn't work like that. And so the whole point of this little sidetrack thought that I'm starting with is just for the love of Pete, be careful where you go to for advice and thoughts. If something feels off about a person, then chances are there's something off. Or if you see language like, where it's very misogynistic, it's, man spanks, woman must take spanking. That's a sign of somebody who needs a little more lifestyle education, and it's also possibly a sign that the individual themselves might have some issues with women. So just please be careful where you go to for your lifestyle advice. I'm not going to go into the whole spiel on other red flags and things to look for, but just for the love of Pete, you know, if you've got somebody who's writing about safety protocols, and then it suddenly goes off the rails with being cock and ball torture suddenly, and I mean, it just was like, oh my God, how can you even like? For my mind was blown because it's like, how can you conceivably go from talking about safety protocols to this over here, which is completely, if this is what it means to you, still unrelated to what you're writing about. So anyway, I will kind of put the little soapbox away, and we'll get back to it. As I was saying when we started, the year has absolutely just flown by, which means New Year's Eve and New Year's Day is almost here. Now, here in the United States, New Year's Day means football. It's college football all over the place. I think it starts at noon or maybe 11:30 with the first bowl game, and it will go through, I don't know, whatever time the games on the West Coast finish. And this year, my great state of Michigan, the University of Michigan, is currently the number one rated team in all of college football. And however, they are playing Alabama, who is rated number four, and whoever wins this game advances to the national finals, where in another bowl game on New Year's Day, ratings number two and number three will play each other. So the thing about it is that the new year, not only does it bring a whole host of American football, it also brings these wonderful things called New Year's resolutions. Whether we like it or not, maybe we say we don't make New Year's resolutions. Most people have a thing or two that they want to work on. They want to get better at next year. In the new year, I'm going to work out more. In the new year, I am going to work to get that promotion. Whatever it is, chances are there's something on everyone's agenda for 2024. And so thinking on that, I was tossing around what I wanted to work on for next year, and I have an idea, which I'll let the cat out of the bag here. I have recently started taking up writing some poems, writing poetry. It's very outside of my normal. It's outside of my usual just the facts realm. I mean, I guess you could say, I'm a trained writer about history. That's where my writing background training came from. Was being the old history major. So it is a very uh, fact-based type of writing. So writing poetry is very much out of my norm. So my thought for 2024 is to write at least a poem a week. And if I do that, that'll be 52 poems. Now, if I can keep, if I can write 52 poems and I can keep the subject matter on the lifestyle, I think that would be kind of a unique thing. And since we live in the world of self-publishing now, my goal is if I'm able to write at least 52, that way it'd be kind of a nice little small book, to actually publish a book of my poems. I'm not saying my poetry is going to rival Shakespeare or anything along those lines, but I'm thinking of that as my 2024 Kingtastic goal. So if you have feedback for me on that, or if anybody out there is somebody who has gotten published or done self-publishing, I would love to chat with you, hear about it, hear about what to expect, because it's kind of all a big unknown for me at this point. And of course, I like things that are defined. So an unknown is undefined, which puts it out of my comfort zone, which is part of the reason why I am pushing myself to do that, because it's going into an unknown, not only an unknown writing style, but an unknown, how do I get it from out of my head onto my laptop and then into a book that someone may actually purchase, or I don't know whether they like you have to buy so many to begin with, and if not, you end up with them. If that's the case, then I'll probably be sitting on how many ever volumes of my poetry after the fact. But anyway, that's what I'm tossing around as my 2024 goal. And to get there, okay, I'm a dominant. But in a way, to get there, I have to sort of dominate myself. I have to uh, kind of put a collar on my neck and say, okay, I am committing myself to this and I'm going to hold myself accountable to do this. And in essence, that's what a kind of a dominant does in the consensual space of the negotiated dynamic. And the concept of self-collaring has been something that I've seen before. I may have talked about it in a podcast before, even. And it's primarily a method that submissives use to achieve goals when they are unpartnered, a way to bring the lifestyle in and help motivate them to achieve their goals and whatnot. And the more I got thinking about that, and the more I got thinking about my poetry goal, I don't know if at this point we should call it a poetry pipe dream, but whatever it is, that whole thing, I thought, I need to kind of apply that to myself. And so that conversation that I had with myself, that I'm now having with you, don't worry, I had it in my head. I wasn't having it out loud. Sitting in a Starbucks, I wasn't the weird, crazy guy at Starbucks talking to themselves. But let's talk a little bit about how we can use DS to empower ourselves to achieve goals, whether you want to call it self-coloring or perhaps call it something different, because I can kind of sort of hear some dominance, oh, collars are for submissives and those types of things. So, whatever way you want to call it, maybe we drop the self-collaring altogether and just talk about using the process of the lifestyle to help us achieve our goals. So, the whole part of this is to really kind of hold ourselves accountable and do so in the same way that we are held accountable or we hold somebody else accountable in the lifestyle. Now, what this really does, it gives us, a sense of empowerment. The lifestyle is empowering, especially for those of us like myself who have founded a home. And so we're taking the lifestyle, we're using it to empower ourselves, and we're also giving ourselves kind of the autonomy. We're letting ourselves um, rule ourselves to make sure that we get to the end place that we want to get to. On top of that, it's going to help us grow. I mean, it's going to help keep us on track, which is going to help us to grow. It's also going to allow us to do self-reflection, which we, of course, are going to need throughout this process because no matter how good we think we've got it lined up, we're going to need to make changes to it and we're going to have to learn and do all of that. And that takes reflection. And of course, as we move towards a goal, we gain confidence. So, really, the lifestyle, if we apply it to ourselves to achieve goals, especially those of us who are unpartnered, it can be absolutely fantastic. Of course, we will have to set up accountability for ourselves. We're going to have the rules and guidelines and boundary setting conversation that we would normally have with a partner, we're going to have to work that out within ourselves, which sounds easy, but really, to create the roadmap to success, it's gonna be harder to have it with ourselves because oftentimes a partner can kind of be the voice of reason. We as humans are, I think, we're programmed to be harder on ourselves, to expect more out of ourselves, sometimes than what's humanly possible, or at least for each individual human as we are. So it's very important that when we do the accountability step for ourselves, that we're realistic with it, that we set aside goals that we can realistically achieve, that we can make, and that we're not going to put ourselves in a position where the goals that we have set or the rules we have set, like I'm thinking my rule would be that I have to publish a poem every week, no later than Thursday, which still gives me Friday, Saturday, and depending on how you count Sunday, a couple of extra days should something go bump, should work be crazy that week, or just life is crazy that week. I've got a couple extra days to get that poetry written And then the other thing on top of all that other crazy stuff, for in my case, is if the creativity gods will let the words that ramble in my head actually come out onto the page. So all of that establishing achievable rules and boundaries for ourselves. And then once we have that, the next component is the consistent enforcement of how we're going to enforce this. I mean, we are going to have to be the primary mechanism to hold ourselves accountable. And going back to my poetry writing thing, one of the ways that I'm thinking of holding myself accountable is that Thursdays on my blog will be the day that I share that week's creation. And see, there again, I'm shooting myself in the foot if I'm going to write a book. I've already put this out there, so if you follow my blog, you've read all the poems. Anyway, um, getting back to that, we have to uphold and enforce, however, the rules, whether it's not allowing for a snack that we like or mandating, I don't know, for me, maybe I have to eat lima beans if I don't get a poem written in a week. Somehow we have to find uh, the internal, the right mix of reward versus consequences to get things done. And when we approach it with that DS component, it makes it a firmer goal, a firmer grasp on it. Uh, we will feel more compelled to do it, being both the combination of the enforcer and the obedient participant. An enforcer makes me think over to hockey because an enforcer on a hockey team is somebody who is there to make sure that your hockey team skilled players are not, say, handled roughly, and if they are, the enforcer steps in and enforces upon the other team, normally through the use of their fist, that the other team's behavior is not acceptable. So basically, it's the old-fashioned schoolyard mentality. Don't mess with my friend or I beat you up. But we have to have that enforcer side of ourselves ready to go, along with being the participant. And of course, it is always better when you set this up to have rewards set up that you like, have more rewards than, say, enforcements, so that you can be celebrating goals, celebrating achievements, rather than kind of beating yourself up with having to uh, do whatever it is that you have decided is going to be a way to enforce consequences for a misstep. The other thing that as individuals we have to do without any outside help here is learn from our mistakes and our lapses because let's face it, we're human. We are going to excel at one thing, and that's making mistakes. So when we have a foobar moment and we totally screw the pooch, we're going to have to self-reflect and learn from them so that we can do better going forward, which may mean, just like if you were in a DS relationship, going back, tweaking the rule to make it more, more fitting to real life, or tweaking perhaps the way that you're held accountable, or a combination of all of that. But every time we make a mistake, uh, we have to program ourselves to not see mistakes as mistakes, but see them as, okay, goofed up here. Here's what I can learn from the goof up, and then apply it going forward. And once again, with the accountability side of it, uh, this is an opportunity. Now, perhaps we don't go to our friends. We can involve our friends here, but we may not want to share depending on your friendship, you may not want to go to your friend and say, "Hey, I'm trying to hold myself accountable using some DS principles. So if I screw up, will you come over and spank me?" And if they're vanilla, that probably would not be a good idea. Um, so it is, I think, important that where we can, we do involve. close friends or family members or trusted people where they will be trusted to, occasionally check in with us, see how we're doing, or if we've given them like milestones, like in my case, I don't know what it would be. Say the end of January, 4 pieces of poetry, 4 weeks in a month. I don't know how many actual Thursdays there are in January. I suppose I could look that up right now for just for fun. But see, January, yeah, it would be 4 pieces of poetry. So I could ask one of my vanilla friends, say, hey, can you throw it in your calendar that, at the end of January, you ask me how many pieces of poetry I've written. I'm trying to do this thing where I write a piece of poetry every week. Now, of course, being guys, I will probably get a few eye rolls and I'm like, oh my God, you're writing poetry. But other than that, we can involve our vanilla friends and enjoy in my case, the harassment that would come from a few of the guys, which is all in good fun, by the way. The other thing we can do is that we can journal about our experiences. Uh, For example, I have my blog where obviously I would and will probably talk about this at various points because it'll be on my mind, so I'll blog about it. But having a journal or whatever the digital platform is that you use perhaps to document your thoughts. And if you don't, maybe that's something to think about for the new year is to have a journal. It's not something you have to share with the world, but just a place where you can share your thoughts. So when we add the accountability piece in there, we're really kind of de-essing, dominating our submissive selves or submissive, dominating, however it works. You know what I'm trying to, you're doing the thing to you, the other side of your slash to yourself. The other thing I think this process is going to teach us is it's going to teach us a little self-compassion. Uh, I think it's an area that I struggle in, and I know that many other amazing people out there struggle with it because we are so, I don't know, driven to do our best all the time. Growing up, there was a saying that I had to live up to, which totally drove me bonkers. And who knows? Maybe it partially explains, uh, I don't know, where I am today or how I got here. But the saying was not practice makes perfect, but it was perfect practice makes perfect, which sounds fantastic. But the trouble is whenever you start a new skill, you're starting to learn anything. Uh, you're not gonna be perfect out of the box. In fact, you're probably gonna suck at it. So that whole perfect practice thing, well, no, you have to be imperfect with your practice to get to. None of us are ever going to be perfect. So you have to practice, make mistakes, learn from your mistakes, and get there. And this whole process is going to help teach you self-compassion because you're going to start to learn that you can't be perfect in all your practices and start to accept the imperfections and then start to recognize that achievements, even if they're small, they create positivity and work to create a positive and reinforcing feedback loop that reinforces positivity rather than reinforcing the negativity, like that whole perfect practice crapola. Another area that this is all going to give us a chance to grow with if we decide to employ it is not only are we going to kind of lean on our friends a little bit and say, hey, will you check in and at this milepost and see how I'm doing with my plans, but it's another great way to engage the lifestyle community. It's a great way to potentially meet others. Obviously, this concept is not new. Might be kind of new to talk about it. Dominants using it on themselves, but it's a great way to interact with the community. Hey, this year, this is one of my goals. This is how I'm getting there. What advice and support might you guys have? Another bit on the community here, submissives. There are going to be a lot of dominants who are going to put their hands up and going, "Oh, I'll help you." I would highly recommend for something like this, having and going to a group of supportive, submissive peers rather than dominance because unfortunately there are bad actors out there in the lifestyle. We all know this. And going to a group of peers, no matter what side of the slash you're on, going to a group of peers on the same side of your slash, whether you're dominant or submissive, it will help, I believe, keep you in a situation where it'll be positive and the people you'll be working with, talking to about it, are truly concerned for your own, for your growth and your success rather than having ulterior motives. And that could be a dominant going to a submissive or a submissive going to a dominant, however that works. But focus on the side of the slash that you identify with. And as I said before, uh, work on evolving your rules that you set for yourself over time. We are often harder on ourselves than we need to be, and when we do make missteps, we are going to have learning experiences from them. And as we grow, as we evolve, I think it's very important that we evolve our rules to make them so that they are more positive. And probably because we are harder on ourselves, then evolution will be kind of a lightening of the rules as we go forward. Because we're going to want to adjust it so that we are achieving and we are creating positive feedback loops rather than getting ourselves caught up in negativity. Oh, I didn't get it done by Thursday, and oh, life got crazy, or hey, I took a weekend skiing and I left Thursday and I didn't publish, and blah, 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 blah. I can see how I could easily set myself up for a negative feedback loop. So I think it's very important that part of the process be evolving our rules as we go so that we can still hold ourselves accountable. I'm not saying change the rules. So it's like, well, I'll just write two pieces of poetry by Memorial Day, the end of, 1st of June, two pieces of poetry. No, no. I mean, we're still going to want to hold the accountability side there, but we're going to want to do it in a way that is positive and empowers ourselves rather than creating, like I said, a negative feedback loop. Now, the other bonus point, I think, of all of this, if we do this, no matter whether we're dominant, submissive, or switch, I think there are some enticing details too that happen with really using DS techniques on ourselves. I think that it will make us more attractive to prospective partners. And the reason why I think that is we are going to have a better understanding of ourselves. The whole process of going back and having thoughts, and figuring out how to correct where maybe we're off a little bit with our rules or how we can create a better positive feedback for ourselves, or just a simple way that we are going in thinking about what we want, how we're going to get there. We're really working on becoming more self aware. We're understanding ourselves better. And doing that, I think, is something that prospective partners find attractive. Another thing is, let's face it, in the whole DS world, it's pretty sexy, no matter whether you're dominant or submissive, to see a partner that's committed to growth. And so by doing this, we are committing ourselves to growing as individuals, and we don't need a partner to do this growth. So it's sort of, I think, making us more desirable because we are growing as people, and as we grow, we're growing with building self-awareness, which is helping to build our self-confidence, and let's face it, that helps make us overall much more desirable. And on top of it, we're really kind of embracing our autonomy. We're being individuals, but we are individuals with a goal. So that, of course, I think is attractive. And finally, part of the whole DS world is commitment to your partner and discipline, whether it's uh, doing what is, as in the submissive side, doing what is expected and going above and beyond because you're submissive and you really want to, please your dominant, or whether it's the dominant upholding the discipline angle when it's needed. Either way, holding ourselves accountable, bringing that discipline and commitment piece to the table, I think also enhances our attractiveness, because we are showing that we are more reliable and we are more dedicated to the principles really that govern DS dynamics. So I think if we do all of this as an added bonus of not only will we be achieving our goals in 2024, we will be in the process. Those of us who are unpartnered, which is me, I am one of those people. It should be enhancing our desirability should we, in the course of our travels, meet somebody amazing. So, those are my thoughts on how we can use the DS lifestyle to enhance our daily lives and enhance our 2024 and achieve our goals. So, I would love to know your thoughts. And by the way, also, I have, I think, one or two pieces of my amateur poetry out there on my blog. So if you've happened to see those, I would love your feedback as well there as to what you think, or if you want to share what you think I could do better, I would be very open and grateful for that too. So I will end by saying please don't forget to follow the podcast. No matter where you listen, just click the little follow button. So whenever a new episode comes out, which is every Tuesday, you'll be notified so you can listen to the latest content as soon as it comes out and as soon as you are in a place ready to hear it. And I look forward to joining you and chatting with you next week when Hanukkah will be in full swing and we will be talking about how to fight the feeling of being overwhelmed by the lifestyle. I did a little poll on FetLife and on Instagram and even over on my Tumblr blog, and I was really amazed by the number of people who shared that they at times have felt overwhelmed by the lifestyle. And so because of that, I thought, well, great, let's talk about how to keep from keep the lifestyle from overwhelming us, how to kind of dominate the lifestyle and keep ourselves on an even keel while we do it. So until next week, when we talk about how not to feel overwhelmed with all things kinktastic, I hope everyone has an amazing week. Their holiday season is off to a fabulous start. You have your Christmas wish list ready for Santa, and I will talk to you next week.